Hi guys, so I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit in this just to keep myself on track, but the book I did was Wannabes, Goths, and Christians, The Boundaries of Sex, Style, and Status, and this was by Amy C. Wilkins. To give a little bit of background on the book, she talks about 3 subcultures of society, and like the title says, these are the Wannabes, Goths, and Christians, which I will go into more detail about. And really why these cultures became a thing was because just being white was boring and they wanted to kind of find meaning in their life, and so these different groups became a thing so that they could fit in within them. She conducted her research through an in-depth analysis and ethnographic details. She conducted countless hours of participant observation and also 80 interviews, so I would say that her evidence is reliable. I'm going to start with one of the cultures, which was the wannabe culture. And something that was emphasized in this was the women getting with more men and like hooking up with men, and they were seen as sexual objects more so than a woman not in this group, which definitely goes against the female stereotype that our society has. And something in that was the white men who would get with these wannabes, and it was said that they were kind of taking control of them, taking advantage of these girls who wanted to get with a lot of men, and they were almost exploited by them. I related this to the TED Talk video where there were the ads that kind of exploited women, definitely followed along with a lot of stereotypes. There was one called that said like feminine odor is everyone's problem, kind of just exploiting women through these ads, and I thought that fit in a lot. I'm going to kind of go into the goth culture now. This culture involved a lot of sex, I guess. Like freaky sex was accepted, and it was kind of a main thing to dress sexy, and then you'll fit in with this culture. Let's see. I think there's just objectification, which women are more so placed in than men, but in this culture it didn't matter what gender you were. Something that was pretty big was hooking up with other people. They didn't have true relationships, like explicit relationships. Instead, they just hooked up with other people, which is frowned upon in our culture. It seems taboo, I guess. And then the Christian culture, which is, I would say, almost the opposite of both of these, was sexual abstinence, one of the main concepts of it. And this was seen as a huge deal for the men in this culture because men can't control their sexual urges, whereas women were already expected to do it. So it was definitely praised for men following this, whereas women were just expected to, so it didn't really matter that much. And then kind of relating all of these together was the girls in the wannabe relationships were seen as seeking out for money and sex, which is usually frowned upon for women, but a direct quote from the book was a girl named Kim who was living with her Puerto Rican boyfriend, 7 months pregnant, dealing drugs, and has about $1,000 worth of gold on her body. And I think this demonstrated how women in this group would usually be frowned upon for this behavior, but in this culture it's just accepted to do that. And then just a huge shift from that was the Christian culture, and it talked about how images of young men's sexual desires are everywhere, and it's just kind of a social norm for it to be like that. But in this culture, they definitely go against the masculine stereotype there, where, as I said before, the women were expected to do that. And then the gender stereotypes in the Goth culture were definitely more fluid. They twisted the heterosexual rules more so. It was almost expected for most of them to be bisexual or just open to really anything. And a lot of it was the culture depends on participation rather than like sexual play. So the clothing they wore, and it was just a lot more fluid in this culture. Like, you could really do whatever you wanted, but none of it followed our societal norms. I thought, all in all, this book brought up some good points about masculinity and femininity, and it talked about a lot of topics we discussed in class. While it fit in with these topics, it definitely challenged them, because a lot of them are norms that our society is expected to follow. And all of these cultures broke different norms of it. But there was a lot to relate it into, just breaking stereotypes for the most part. Like I said before, these cultures really became a part of society to avoid living a meaningless life and just fitting in with the white society and being boring, which I felt it was interesting that they just called it boring and meaningless, but it's just all these norms are pretty common, and they just wanted to find a way to be different while still fitting in with a group. Thank you.